Okay, so thanks for joining us today for Conestoga Supportive Care Program information session. So my name is Angela, and I'm here to tell you a bit more about the program. I'm one of the supportive care support services officers. So we're going to go through a few different things about the supportive care program. So what is supportive care? Sometimes that terminology is not clear. A day in the life, a bit about the course structure, why supportive care is something we're needing, the realities of support work, the employer partners that we have, some registration requirements, and some frequently asked questions. And I'll leave some time at the end for us to answer any of your questions. So do keep note of any questions that you have throughout so we can address them at the end. And you're welcome to write the questions in the chat. Okay, so with supportive care, a lot of people say, oh, I don't really have any experience, or I've never worked in that type of work. I've never done any training that's related. That's perfectly fine. But we are looking to see more about your personality and some of your soft skills or transferable skills that you've used from other areas of your life. It doesn't have to be work. So we're looking for people that are natural caregivers. So this could be you if you have ever supported a child, right? That involves a lot of caregiving, maybe a parent, another family member, or a friend. So yeah, maybe we've helped them with getting up in the morning, getting dressed, getting food for them, right? Those are all caregiving tasks. But it could also look like you're maybe the type of the person that likes to offer your seat up on the bus for other people that are in need. Maybe you've been in the grocery store and someone's having a hard time reaching the top shelf. So maybe you've offered assistance to them. Maybe you see someone crossing the road that's maybe a bit wobbly, so you offer some assistance. It could be as simple as holding the door open for someone. Maybe you are the type of person that prepares food when someone is going through a hard time, or maybe offer a listening ear. So those are just a few examples of what a caregiver might do in an informal way in your personal life. It doesn't have to be through a job. So yeah, think about your own daily life and your experiences. Are there times where you have been a caregiver, or maybe you haven't had that opportunity, but that's something you feel like you would like to do, or you feel that urge or passion? Okay, so supportive care, it is a course to be able to provide you with personal care techniques. So it is related to the personal support worker program at Conestoga. It's actually the same as level 1 of the PSW program, or personal support worker. So that is a bonus, because if you decide the training goes well, your employment's going well, but you want to get that PSW certificate later on, you can apply for advanced standing. So that's a bonus of this program, but you don't have to do that. Maybe you're satisfied with the job that you're going to have at the end. So with supportive care, you can do personal care work in some capacities, often in home care or retirement homes or group home settings. But typically for long-term care or hospitals, they do need you to have that personal support worker certificate. So with personal care, that can involve helping someone get up in the morning, helping them with accessing the washroom, whether that's helping them physically get there or helping them with changing a brief or using other devices. It could look like helping them get bathed, brushing their teeth, preparing a light meal, and having maybe some time to chat with them and build a relationship. So especially if you're going into someone's home, right? That's pretty personal. So it's going to be easier for both of you if you get to know each other and develop a trusting relationship. Okay, so having some time to chat, maybe engage in activity together, whether that's while they're eating or maybe going for a short walk together, playing a game. In some cases, you might need to be helping with preparing a meal or serving, and if you're in a retirement home setting. It might look like offering support with organization, removing garbage and recycle, doing dishes, or support with laundry. So that's pretty typical. And then another thing you could be supporting with in this type of work is errands and daily tasks. So especially if you were to work in a group home, a lot of times you are taking people out into the community. They might have a volunteer role, or they might have events to go to for social interaction. Maybe it's to go to a community center, or it could be helping them with errands, or getting to an appointment. Maybe it's picking up groceries for someone. So those are a few examples of what could be involved with supportive care work. And the focus is to prepare you to assist individuals to be able to live independently. Okay, so a lot of people are choosing to stay in their homes rather than going to a retirement home if possible. So we need a lot more people in that type of work. So we also focus on providing you a holistic approach to support individuals and their families. So that means not just considering their physical needs, but also their emotional, social, spiritual needs as well. And oftentimes you are not just interacting with the individual, but their family or their support system, possibly pets if they have them. And individuals you're supporting, they could be seniors, they could be people with developmental or physical disabilities or mental health disabilities, or they could also be someone that is recovering from an illness or an injury and needs some temporary support. Okay, so be prepared to support people at various levels of health and wellness. Right, one person could be bedridden and the other person could be very active. Okay, so the idea is we want to be able to focus on providing the client with the right to respect, dignity, and confidentiality, cultural integrity, independence, and choice. So it's not us just going in and choosing what someone else is going to do that day or what they're going to wear, right? We want to give them as much freedom as possible and have them do as much as possible on their own without our support. So kind of like their guide or their cheerleader maybe. And you want to be mindful that you're in their space, right? This is where they live. This is really personal. So you're not sharing personal details about that individual or where they live with other people in your life. Maybe they eat very different food than you do, or participate in different cultural activities. So you want to support them with what they're used to and what they want to do. So supportive care is not the same as personal support worker or nursing, but it is a pathway to get there. So as I mentioned, so the supportive care program is level 1 of the PSW program, and it is offered tuition free. So it's a great way to be able to get working faster, get the necessary skills. And then if that's all good, you like that kind of work, you want to take on more school, you want that personal support worker certificate, you just need to complete level 2. Okay, and that can also lead into nursing if you're looking at practical nursing. But the supportive care program is not going to give you those jobs at the moment. And same with palliative care. You don't receive a lot of training about supporting people at the end of their life. There might be situations where you are offering support with that, but you probably aren't the main person on that case. That would come later on with the personal support worker level 2. Okay, so a question we often get is, what does a typical day look like? So it really depends on the environment you're going to be in. So you could be working in home care, you could be working in a group home or a retirement home. So it varies quite a bit. So just go through an example for home care. So with home care, you might have a client that is for 2 hours in the morning. So they want some help with getting up, getting their day started. So maybe you go to someone's house for 7 a.m. A family member greets you at the door. You go in and gently wake up your client, help them pick out something to put on, helping them get to the washroom, get in the shower, making sure that there's no hazards when they get out. There's not a bunch of water on the floor, maybe helping them apply lotion, preparing a light meal for them. So maybe you're going to have some toast and some tea. Maybe you sit with them while they eat it and have a conversation about the weather or what your plans are for that week. And If they're feeling up to it, maybe you also go for a walk around the block with them. And then maybe finish up around 9 o'clock, and then you go on maybe to a next client. Another example could be maybe somebody that needs more care. Some might need 24-hour care. Maybe this is for an individual that is bedridden. Maybe their health is not as well. So again, when you go in, you are, again, helping them with changing their brief. You're helping them with sitting up and maybe accessing, maybe that they have a feeding tube, right? Making sure that that is working properly. Yeah, and then maybe you're sitting there in that room with them. Maybe you're doing activity together. But yeah, it really depends on each person and how much support they need. Sometimes you maybe just need to be there, but you don't need to be actively doing a task at all times. Maybe you're going to do their laundry that day. Yeah, so it's kind of a partnership with the client to be able to help them with whatever their goals are, the activities they'd like to do. Okay, so why supportive care? So currently there's no post-secondary educational credential for supportive care workers, which includes personal care techniques. So we need a lot of personal care support. There is a gap across Ontario, so that's why this program was introduced. And there's no tuition costs, so it is free. You don't have to pay for books. You don't have to pay for any of the courses. There are a couple exceptions depending on your case. But yeah, overall, you don't have to worry about tuition. And it's a great entry point into the healthcare industry. So if you've always wanted to try it out, this is a great place to start. I know a lot of times people start in these roles and then they work their way up into other positions. Okay, so we want to make sure that you as a new healthcare provider are feeling confident and that you have a standard level of understanding and the certifications to be successful. Okay, so you want you, your employer, and your clients to make sure that you're able to carry out the job well. And one bonus of this type of work, especially home care, is it's a great opportunity to have a diverse caseload and in the community. So if you're someone who doesn't like the same thing every day, you like some variety, home care might be a really great fit because you get to meet more people, you get to be invited into their home, so you're not always looking at the same four walls all day. And you have some more independence. So you typically don't have a team along with you. It's often just yourself and the client. So there's nobody looking over your shoulder or giving you instructions. So that can sometimes be really beneficial. So I mentioned you do need to have an employer for this program. So we do have some employer partners that have agreed to take on some students. So you do need to go through their employment process and get an offer of employment from them. So you are going to be hired on, you are their employee, and that needs to be done before you register for the program. So I mentioned our next registration, our next start date is April. So it would have to be before the start date. Okay, and they would be the ones to share the registration forms with you. Okay, so you're connected to this employer. Maybe you already have an employer that you're wishing to do your hours with. That's okay too. We can consider that as long as your employer is on board and has signed our documents. And the bonus of having an employer partner is you already have an employer for your preceptorship or your field placement hours, and there's no delay in working. So a lot of employers might wait until you complete the program to have you start working for them, but a lot of them will have you at least go through the orientation process, and in some cases, they might be able to have you start working in a lesser role before you finish. Okay, so you don't have to worry about taking a training and wonder, am I going to get a job at the end, right? This guarantees that you will. And it's expected that you would stay with that employer partner for the duration of the program and stay with them for a period of time after. So it is important that you make sure your employer is the right fit for you. All right, and it's also important to think about what interests you about providing support or being a caregiver. So I always find that if there's some internal motivator, something from inside me, that's motivating me to do the work, I find it a lot more enjoyable and easier to do. There's always going to be hard days or days where maybe it's a little bit harder to wake up. But if we remind ourselves why we chose to do this work, why we care, it can be really helpful. So maybe you want to do this work because you genuinely care about people. You like to bring them joy, make a difference in their lives, build relationships with them, see their freedom be increased. And then some more tangible things or more external. You can make a living wage from this type of work. There are lots of career pathways, and employers are usually pretty supportive of that. And you always are learning new skills. Okay, so things are always changing. There's always new techniques and methods that are out there. So it's great to be learning. It's not boring, I would say. I also want to make you aware of some realities, especially in home support work. So if you're going into people's homes, it is very personal. Even if you're going into someone's room in a retirement home, again, think of it as you would, right? So if somebody was coming into your room, your house to help you, how would you feel about that? People might have very different lifestyles or environments. So maybe the temperature is a little bit hotter than you prefer. Or maybe they have more clutter than you would prefer. That's something that we have to accept. We can't change that to suit us. It is really important that you're committed to being professional, reliable, and responsible. So with this type of work, right, somebody's care, somebody's quality of life is on the line. So if we're not able to make a shift, there's a chance there might not be a replacement. And even if there is a replacement available for you, they don't know that client, they don't know their routine. So it's not going to feel the same, right? So it's really important being on time, making sure that you're showing up on time and respecting the person and their environment. Okay, so having that sense of trust is super important. The other piece is around your availability to work. So in home care, a lot of times they try to be mindful of your schedule or your availability, but it's also important to consider that healthcare never really stops, right? There are some clients that need 24-hour care. So this work will include evenings, weekends, and overnight shifts. So usually employers need you to be available for at least one of those, maybe on a weekly basis, if not more. Especially if you want to be working full time, the more open availability you have, the easier it will be for them to match you with clients. It's also good to consider, do you have unexpected duties or responsibilities that sometimes pop up? So for example, maybe a child is sick, maybe, or an animal is sick, your pet, how are you going to respond to those? Is it something that happens quite frequently or quite rare? Thinking about that. Ideally, you want to consider having some sort of balance of what your needs are and also considering the needs of the company and each client. Right? So we don't want the client to be put in a situation where, yeah, nobody's there to help them. So a bit of an overview of the program. So we want to help you develop the knowledge, skills, and competencies so you can deliver quality, safe, and ethical assistance. So the program is 18 weeks long, which is about 4 months, and includes an 80-hour paid preceptorship. So that would be completed with your employer. You'd be shadowing their staff and helping them with their clients. So it's a practical component, so you're able to practice what you've learned. And it also acts as an orientation before you're on your own. The classes themselves are running 5 days per week, about 3 hours a day, and then you would have approximately 10 hours per week of self-directed studies after class. Okay, so the classes are live on Zoom, so you can take them anywhere around Ontario. And there is an option to take an in-person lab in Kitchener at the Doon campus. But if that's not convenient for you, they're also available virtually. It is important that you are prepared to start working once you complete the program, so you have signed that employment contract. The employer is counting on you to be working for them once you finish. All right, and then I'll go through the key courses. So there are 3 key theory courses that you would be completing. Professional practice, which covers more around communication and organization, maintaining boundaries, the importance of reporting, following policies and legislation. The second course is structure and function of the body. So that involves more around anatomy and typical disorders and diseases that might be experienced by the people you're supporting. And then the last one is your lab course. So you'll get some instruction on some days. You'll have your lab or practical technique demonstration. So you're going to be actually practicing the techniques and making sure that you're doing them properly before you're even with a person. So that's the 3 key courses you'd be completing. We do have a block style delivery, which means you complete one at a time, so you don't have to balance all 3 at once. Okay, in terms of certifications, so there's 3 key certifications you would also receive. So there's food safety training to make sure when you are preparing food that you're following that protocol. Red Cross Standard First Aid and CPR. So this one is in person. So we do offer it at the Conestoga Dune campus. But if you live in another area that's not convenient, you can also go through a local provider and we will reimburse you for the cost. And then the other certification is mental health first aid. So sometimes when people are struggling, they're not able to do the things that they enjoy. They might struggle with their mental health as well. So that's one of the reasons why we have that. The last piece is the preceptorship or the field placement. So this is your opportunity to get some hands-on experience before you're working on your own. So you are always matched with another employee, so you're not on your own, and they're there to give you support and feedback. Okay, so just a couple other things to mention. So with the courses, the focus is on providing person-centered care. So what that means is you don't have a one-size-fits-all approach, but you consider each person's needs and goals and personality and make sure that they're the focus, not what you want or what you think is best for them. You also get some opportunity to practice support with skincare, mobility, and also high-risk eating. Hi, so the next cohort we're offering, we have a couple in the spring of 2023. So the classes we'll be offering, there's going to be a daytime class between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. and then an evening class from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So I know some of you might be working, or between now and then you might have another job opportunity. So hopefully one of these times will be able for you to adjust. So both of the times are pending availability. So as long as we have enough people, we can run both times. May, it's going to be the same thing. And then in the fall of 2023, so September and October is when we'll be offering the next cohorts. Likely the same times, but depends on the popularity for the spring. So here on the side is just a sample of the calendar. So as I mentioned, you're only going through one course at a time, so you don't have to juggle 3 classes at once. But that does also mean that the course progresses pretty quickly. So if you do miss a day, you are missing a significant amount of content that you would need to get caught up on. The classes are virtual, live on Zoom. So it is a virtual class. The only in-person components would be first aid and CPR, and then if you choose the in-person lab option for your last course. Okay, so you get a lot of opportunity for learning through classes and labs, and then you have 80 hours that you complete with your employer. So this would be called your preceptorship, and that can be done over a 2 to 8 week period. So you can be doing that while you're doing your lab course. That's when employers can start to schedule you. And then we give you 2 weeks at the end where you don't have any classes to finish up your hours. So I will note that it's really important to have open availability for employers to schedule your shifts around the class times. Yeah, because if you're only available for a very small window, it's going to be really hard for them to get a preceptor that's going to be available at the same time. Okay, so you do need some flexibility for that. And that's where it can be, if you do have another job, that can be a little bit tricky. So you'll have to see whether your employer is open to scheduling around that. Okay, so the labs are typically scheduled during the day between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., whether you choose in person or a virtual option. And then some registration requirements. So number one is you do need to receive a conditional offer of employment from one of our employer partners. If there's employers that aren't on our list that you would really like to work for, you can let us know and we can try to reach out to them, but we can't always guarantee that they are going to sign on in time for the cohort that you want. Okay, we can make some introductions, so I'll get into that soon. But your employer would be the one to share the supportive care application form as well as a consent form for you. And we would also get a copy of your offer letter, and we would also need some education documents. I'll get into that in a moment. On the application form, we do ask about your eligibility to work and study in Canada. So we can accept individuals who are Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or conventional refugees. And we want to make sure that you are currently living in Ontario and you're planning to work in Ontario. Okay, so you don't need to submit any documents to us. That's where it's a little bit different than a typical full-time program. You do not need to apply through OUAC or look for the forms on our website. That would come through our employers and they would send them to us. The other admission requirement, we do need one of the following. So we do need to see that you have Ontario Secondary School diploma. We would need a copy of that transcript if you're 18 or older. If you don't have that, there are a few other options. So we could look at equivalency to high school diploma. So if you have a GED certificate, if you've obtained your high school from another province, if you have a diploma or degree from a public post-secondary institution within Canada, or you've done a credential assessment such as ICAS or WES, or you've done IELTS, we can accept those. And the other option is, if you don't have any of those, is to obtain mature student status. So for this, you do need to be 19 years or older, and maybe you've taken a Conestoga College English course in the past, that could be valid. Or the other option is to take an English literacy assessment. So we have a few options for that. There is an additional cost that you are responsible for. And we do need to receive a passing result before the program start date. Okay, so if you know you're in that boat, I would suggest reaching out sooner rather than later, so we can share all the information with you on how to complete that. It can take some time. Okay, and then the options if you are going to do the English literacy assessment. So you can use Duolingo, where you have unlimited attempts. You typically need to pay higher fees for it, but it is usually easier to set up. There's a quicker turnaround to receive the results, and there also is a higher success rate, especially for those if your first language is not English. You do have to manually send the results to Conestoga, or if you've completed this in the past, we can accept previous results. The other option is a Conestoga Mature Student Assessment. So they only give you 2 attempts per academic year, and they do receive the results directly, but they only receive them twice a week. The cost is a bit lower. You do have to wait longer after you register to schedule the assessment, and there are 24-hour test appointments available. So I mentioned this at the beginning, but just so you know, people that are not eligible for the program, if you are a temporary resident, with a work or study permit, unfortunately, we're not able to consider you. For this program, you do need to be able to legally work and study in Canada. And we're also not able to consider current or prospective international students. If you are an international student, we do have a program list specifically for international students. So you can check that out here. I'm happy to send the link. The closest one would be our personal support worker program. Okay, and then getting into some frequently asked questions. Okay, so the first one is, I do not have my high school diploma, but I am above the age of 19. Do I qualify? So if you don't have an equivalency for high school, then we would need you to pass an English literacy assessment before the start date. The second one, what if I don't have childcare? Can I still be considered? So if you have childcare or other duties that may interrupt your training online from time to time, that's okay. Our faculty are supportive and understanding. I don't know if any of you have a pet that maybe likes to interrupt you, but it's also important to consider that this type of work is not a work from home type of job. So you will need to have reliable childcare to complete your preceptorship hours and for your employment. So it's good to have that set up early. And some people work fine with having distractions at home and other people don't. So also judge that for yourself. In terms of devices, so technology devices that are needed. So can I take the program using a tablet, Chromebook, or mobile device? Unfortunately not. This program does require a laptop or computer that has webcam capabilities, as well as a stable internet connection. So if you don't have that, you can always talk to us, talk to your employer. Your employer might have devices that they can loan you, or they might be able to help you with the cost. Another common question is, can I work while attending the program? So it can get a little bit tricky. Again, you know yourself best and what you can handle. So if you're currently working, I would suggest you have at least 25 hours per week to dedicate to the program so that you can attend the live Zoom calls. So they are live. So if you miss it, it's hard to catch up later. And also to complete self-directed studies. So that might include readings, watching videos, participating in discussion boards. And if you're looking to work with your employer partner before you finish, you'd have to discuss this early on, whether this is possible, and making sure that they're aware of your class schedule so there's no conflicts there. Next question is, when can I start my field placement hours or employment hours? So it is appropriate to start your preceptorship hours once you start your lab course. So that's in week 11 typically. And you need to have flexible availability for your employer to schedule your hours. And typically, as I mentioned before, your employment hours would start after you finish your practicum and after you finish the program. And that's typically because you would be given a different role or you might be given a different rate, but it really depends on the employer. Do I have to provide proof of immunizations or health testing? So your employer will require you to provide proof of a two-step TB test and also a completion of a vulnerable sector police check. Okay, so there are some fees associated with these. Your employer might be able to reimburse you. Many of our employer partners also require 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccination and proof of immunizations. So that could include mumps, measles, and rubella. And a lot of them might want you to have this before you start the program, or probably before you start your preceptorship and working with people in person. Next question is, if I have completed previous training such as first aid, do I need to redo this training? So the rule of thumb is about 6 months. If you've done it within 6 months, it's valid, and your employer is okay with that, you're good to go. But yeah, if it's expired or if it's close to expiration, or if your employer says, I know you just did this, but I want you to do it again, yeah, you have to go with that. If you have completed another course, maybe first aid or food safety, you do need to submit that certificate to us so that we can give you credit. If you don't, then you won't be able to complete the course. All right, and then another popular question is, what is the wage rate during my placement hours? So when you're doing your preceptorship, again, it's really up to each employer. So that's a really good question to ask them. I know talking about money can sometimes be awkward, but they will determine what the student rate would be. So it might be based on their company's wage grid. Maybe they're going to give you a stipend instead of an hourly rate. But I'd say on average that they generally pay between $15 and $17 per hour for your field placement. So often when you're shadowing someone, right, it's hard for them to justify paying two people full rates for one client. And a really great resource to find out the typical rates after you finish, I would go to the Job Bank website. They have really good information there. Okay, a few more questions. And what is the difference between supportive care workers and personal support workers? So I mentioned that this supportive care program is equivalent to level 1 of the PSW program at Conestoga. So you're trained to deliver personal care. And supportive care workers are trained to support people, especially adults, who are relatively stable, require predictable levels of care, and or have an established care plan. So you have somewhat know what to expect. Okay, whereas level 2, you would cover more about supporting children, end-of-life care, dementia, and mental health challenges. So you'd be able to support more in different ways. Okay. What is the typical starting wage after completion of the program? So again, this varies by company or role. So it's really good to discuss this before you sign anything. On average, our employer partners have indicated a starting rate between $17 and $24 per hour. If you're doing home care, currently the government is offering a $3 per hour top up, but that might only be available for certain home care clients. All right, and then last one is, what is the recommended English language level for the program? So this applies if English is not your first language. We typically recommend a Canadian language benchmark of 7 or above, but it's ultimately up to your employer. So as long as you're able to understand, communicate with your employer and clients, that includes verbally, listening, and writing, then you're okay. We don't require any documentation for that. Okay, and then going on to types of employers. So I mentioned this a bit at the beginning. So these are the types of employers that we partner with. So there's home care companies. So this often involves traveling to visit clients in their homes, offering one-on-one support with their care, activities of daily living, and companionship. Typically, you have some more independence with home care, as well as flexibility and variability. So that can be really nice. For a group home, often you are supporting maybe 2 to 5 residents with their daily routines, managing their home, errands, and maintaining community connections. So I'd say you might be going more into the community with these individuals, but maybe not always. So you could be working independently or working as a small team. And then the other option is a retirement home. So this is the one we're probably more familiar with. So it involves providing care to multiple residents. So you might be given, say, these 6 people, you're going to help them wake up, get ready for breakfast, make sure they're downstairs. Often you do need to provide support with serving meals, with laundry, housekeeping. And I would say for a retirement home, the benefit is you don't have to drive a lot, but you are usually expected to have a faster pace. Usually you're working with a larger team, and often there's more multitasking and more direction that's being given to you. Okay, so very different environments. So everyone's going to prefer a different one. All right, so to move forward, we do need you to connect with our employer partners in order to get an offer letter and move on to the registration process. So I know sometimes reaching out to employers can cause a bit of nervousness. That's perfectly normal. So there's a couple options we can do to support you. If you prefer to reach out to them on your own, I'm going to send a follow-up email with all their information. We can provide a script for you as well if you prefer, if you're not sure what to say. We can introduce you. So usually by email, we can introduce you to one of our employers or a few of our employers, and they're going to likely respond to you rather quickly. We are going to have some career fairs coming up in the new year. So that's another way, either virtually or in person, that you could connect with the employers. Okay, so a few different options. And I'll just show you quickly a map where you can see where our employer partners are located. We're currently always looking for more. So if you don't see one in your area, let us know. We can try to focus more on that area. Yeah, and see if there's other people that are interested in joining us. So just give me 1 second to share that. Okay, so hopefully you can see this on our map. Okay, so you can see here, we have a few bookmarked. So our employer partners cover from Windsor, a lot in southwestern Ontario, and then goes all the way to Ottawa. Okay, and I think Toronto and the GTA is one of the areas we are looking to get more employers on board. So if that's where you're looking, yeah, stay tuned. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you for next steps is we do have a form for you to fill out. I'm just going to share my screen once more. Okay, so if this sounds like the right fit for you, if you are hoping to move forward and might be interested for the spring or fall next year, I do have a survey I'm going to send out in the chat. So stick around for that and we can chat about it and answer any questions that you have. So this form usually gives us more information about you and your situation. We know that you're pretty serious about moving forward, and then we'll follow up with you one-on-one, either by Zoom or by phone, so that we can talk about what your needs are and employer partners in your area, what might be the best fit for you. And then you can hopefully have that hiring process started. Okay, so I'm going to share that soon. And I would just want to thank you so much for taking your time to be here to learn about the program today. If you do need to contact us, if you have more questions later on, you are welcome to email us at supportivecare@conestogac.on.ca. But yeah, I will stop the recording and I can answer any of your questions for those of you that are here live.